Alrighty. Well then. Hello. I am coming on today to talk about, here we go. Talk about ravishment and the concept of ravishment because there seems to be a muddling and a confusion and a misnomer around it. And I've spoken to this before. In fact, this is literally what set off my entire renaming of how I oriented my practice, because I was originally playing with it, like it was the shift into the body. That I know I just jumped topics, but it's the shift into the body. It's the experience of like feeling all of it versus when I'm working with hypnotism, when I'm working with like rewiring the brain, we often have this assumption that when rewiring the brain, it's about the head. But when we're rewiring our identity, it's about the body. And the head can stand in the way. But if you get the body to shift, then the head is going to eventually come along, no matter what. And that's, I feel like, where I started, which was in massage therapy, which is in like acupressure and myofascial release, the release of where tension, emotions, pain, trauma, stagnation of energy has occurred in the body, and how that process of warming up, refueling, and then releasing from the body, and then readjusting the movement of the body is the source code of all of this. When I was in massage therapy school, it drove me bonkers that we were told that when people had emotions and feelings and like experiences come to the surface, we were not supposed to work with them in the moment. We were supposed to refer them out to a therapist or refer them out to a different professional to handle it because it wasn't our game house, it wasn't our purview. And this felt to the core of me like we were missing this like prime opportunity. Like, why do we have to separate the body and mind? And what was fascinating is they literally prepared us for this because we are so acutely aware that the body and mind work in unison, that you cannot separate them. Yet the way that we've approached healing, understanding ourselves has been in sectioned out parts. And you can see this most prominently, and I speak to this as the daughter of a professor of a family where there are many professors, and we're all very well educated. It's an expectation. We're Jewish, come on. So, this feeling of observing this like fabric fracture point in our society, in our structure of how we approach learning, and feeling like this experience in the body of like becoming a massage therapist and having a background in like fascination with psychology. Like, I grew up having to definitely delve into my own psychology to address like chronic depression issues, processing of trauma. I have an early diagnosis around 5 years old of ADD. Well, they called it ADD at the time because it was the inattentive type, and I wasn't hyperactive, or it was the inattentive type, and I wasn't hyperactive. Um, but 30 years later, we've now integrated the two and begun finally adjusting and understanding what it is. So I was raised with a distinct, like an awareness that something was different about me, but a distinct lack of actual follow through to integrate. And I think just like a lack of ability to take ownership of it. I don't know. But I didn't really grow up with many adjustments for my neurodiversity. Um, Other than the fact that like my mom really fought for an IEP, and she did do that, and she made sure that everyone was always aware of how it was different. But like when you tell someone that something is there but you can't really adequately describe it, or what is there to describe it is inadequate. I mean, in that period of time, it was mainly focused on the educational, like learning difference. But as we began to study it more, it reached this point of now you look at what ADHD and like that type of neurodivergence is often associated with, and one of the most prominent factors is emotional dysregulation and difficulty with regulating emotion for myself, because of overwhelm, because of too much going on, because of just generally the way that the wiring was differently wired. And I believe that this also ties into that time awareness, which let me tell you, time is a flexible thing. Yeah. So anyway, the point is the separation of head from body. And my life, and I feel like all lives of people who are neurodivergent and who are really facing doing the work, the inner work of shifting work into play, and then really moving that experience back into the body and back into the more slow and subtle processes where our mind is the observing tool, where our mind is the awareness, offering us the awareness of everything and being that like conduit for the body. No, this is not going to resonate with everyone, and that's fine. That's beautiful. That's good. We are a fractalized puzzle of the broad spectrum of what humanity is here to be. We are consciousness expanding its experience of itself through mirroring and self-observation, through separating off into alternative experiences of identity. We are doing exactly what we're meant to be doing. See, if we could just shift that, I understand that we wouldn't like have the money issues, but that's what we're shifting. That's what I feel like we're all asking ourselves, like if we could just shift that thing, you know, that awareness that we are all humanity. And when you allow any aspect of yourself to reject any other aspects of yourself, there's going to be this experience of loss and grief and anger and lack of understanding and inherent confusion, because there is disruption to the natural function of the system. And we reach a conundrum here because to our recalled memory, we've never experienced that. That is a rare experience that must be honed in on and obsessed about, fixated on, become the focus, become the everything of the person's life who is diving into what it means to be human. And I feel very certain that this is a lot of where what we call the starseed stuff is coming in, and the like general numbness and this the sense of like narcissism becoming so prominent. And I don't know, sort of like what we did with ADD, ADHD, however you want to call it, all of the different things, we are becoming more aware, and we are starting to identify in a interiorly defined in the body, in a unison experience, in a energetic manner. We are coming to understand and define, I believe, things that have always been part of the human experience, but it's coming to a crystallization point where we are being forced. And that's why all of this stuff is coming out. It's becoming normalized in the best sense of the word. Okay? Now I understand, and I'm totally one of those people, what the fuck is normal? But that's because we're in this transitory period where parts of ourselves, parts of the consciousness of the whole entire collective of us are still clinging to what has been, as we are very rapidly shifting into what is coming. And that's why those of us who are the ones who are bringing it in feel alien, feel different, feel uncertain about how to approach our humanity, because we are literally here as the mutating agent to change what humanity is in a ripple effect sort of fashion. And that's why when you're first starting to let that off, it's like you don't have the context for yourself. You are going in the dark, creating your own context for yourself. And it's incredibly alienating. And it makes it incredibly difficult to be in the body. Which is paradoxical. Because we are in these bodies to have a human experience and to mutate the human experience. And that means that we actually have to be in acceptance and celebration, like true celebration of not only one aspect or one expression or one feeling or one emotion or one thought or one approach or one way of being human. The we are here to be in celebration of all of it, that all of it exists, no matter how the texture of it is. We are here to be this embodiment. That is what the Aquarian age in its essence is about. That's why we are playing with these things in the ways that we are. That's why we're in such confusion. And that's why the answer is to get into your body and establish an intimate connection with your experience in your body and what your body needs in the slow, rhythmic experience in the body. And I get it. We've become unnumbed, finally. More of us, at least. And that's what's making this shift. Truly. We've started to feel our bodies again. That is what 2020 and that experience there brought to us. It's fated. It's destined. It's going to happen. It's not a question of if this shift is going to happen. We are being taken on this ride by our body to remerge with our body, whether we want to or not. It's just if you don't, it'll be a lot more painful. And you'll feel jerked around by it. Versus, well, let's not say versus, because when you're on the spectrum, and that's what all of the manifesting stuff, and law of attraction as another facet of approaching this. And meditation, mindset work. All of these different modalities and different schools of thought. It is a spectrum and a smorgasbord. 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 Sorry. Smorgasbord of ways to approach this reintegration process. And the reintegration process is where we're needing to slow down. And it's going to go achingly slow. And that's why we have so many yin energy, feminine energy, focused stuff going on. And that was the first wave of things. Slow down. Get into your body. And now, at this point, it's time to reclaim. Reclaim the full experience. 2023 is going to force you to do that, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. And that really just comes down to how and where on the spectrum you are operating from moment to moment between resistance and proactive, dismantling and rebuilding. Because as our previous experience of being human fades more and more and more into the distance behind us, shifts further and further and further out of our awareness as we jump timeline upon timeline upon timeline, collectively and individually further away from those previous identities, those previous beings of ourself. We will be able to hold the compassion for them and the understanding for them, and that is why we are offering these codes, these light codes, these creatrix codes, these life flourishing and building, designing codes, coaching codes, abundance codes, prosperity codes, wealth codes, the programming, being infected with this mutation. Because it's all part of one entity, and we look at ourselves as separate from our environment, separate from each other, separate from the earth. We have been in extreme separation, and we are now aware of it. And we are beginning the inching back into unity. And you see this mirrored in all the different sort of ways of looking at it. You can apply the rubber band to any and all. And that is where we're at. The momentum is building in the slingshot movement. The The experience of 2023, I selected impact for my focus because if I am moving with the flow of the energy, then I am caught up on the front end of that wave. Instead of trying to stand in resistance, trying to maintain what has been. Like a city caught in the rise of the ocean, consumed in the process of slow and reconsumption into the collective. Ravishment. Ravishment is allowing yourself to feel that slow consumption. Ravishment is reveling and celebrating in the complete spectrum of the experience of being human. It transcends the wisp of happiness. It transcends the wisp of surviving. It transcends the limitations, and it revels in it, all of it. That feeling of having your attachments and being utterly human. Being in the body and feeling the pain and the ache and the crazy and the hurts and the excitement and the love and the heartbreak. All of it. All of it. And reveling in it instead of rejecting parts and pieces, which is a progression. And we do it in an interchangeable way, you know. You do cycling, or I like to call it spiraling. You gotta catch all the different aspects of it, you know. That's identity shifting. Excuse me. And identity shifting is that wormhole. 2023 is the wormhole. Do you get ripped apart in the worst way possible by the wormhole? Or do you breathe it in? Do you take it into your body? Do you allow it to ravish you? Not ravage. Ravish. R-A-V-I-S-H-I-S-H. Don't you love dyslexia? I can memorize the language, but spelling and speaking it out, always gonna be a little glitchy, I guess. It's always funny. I say funny things. See? Ravishment is the enjoyment of the ridiculousness of my neurodiversity. It's not just like trying to reframe it into something that is only good and ignoring the ways that it makes me frustrated at times. And it could be embarrassing if I wanted it to be, if I allowed it to be. It could be whatever it is. And when I embrace it, when I accept and offer love to myself and it for our experience of it, and I actually am present and observant and there, That is ravishment. And I relate this to the image from, I found this, and I couldn't find where I found it later in the book, but I still have the book, but I'll find it sometime. Anyway, concept of the vulnerable. In Tantra, with a capital V, it's a title. And the image in the book that was described is a human being with their heart cracked open, their chest, their rib cage wide cracked open, and fish hooks with lines into the heart that tug and move us and cause pain. And the delirious nature of surrender into the fullness of the pleasure and the pain of life. It's being in life. It's what is described as why we go up the mountain, to learn to hold. It's to come back and to learn to be in this energy of the vulnerable. To find the unimaginable strength, the unimaginable capacity and willingness to show up and participate. To show up and love as it hurts and is ecstasy in the same moment. I am feeling so full, and it leaks out of me. Exactly. And it's uncomfortable and beautiful in the same breath. The desire for the full experience of being human is to dive into it. And that is ravishment. The acceptance that being human and being fully, really alive will break you. It will hurt you. And you're gonna enjoy the fuck out of it anyway. You're going to enjoy the pain, and you're going to enjoy the pleasure, and you're going to enjoy everything in between. And it's not masochistic at that point. Though, in a way it is, because it's, that black and white. But when you rip that apart, when you sit with those pieces, that is part of being human. When you can live in the intersection of these identities of self, you find a transcendent place. You transcend. That's what they're all talking about. When you can integrate your body and who you are and your ancestry and shift it into the perspective of the next tier of the fractalization up, your higher self, the spirit, Father, the Son, Spirit. I mean, you can use a triangle in all these sorts of ways, but it's all about the transcendence out to see perspective, or the descent in, the seating in, the anchoring in, the anchoring back into the body, the slowing down. And it's doing both at once. becoming the consciousness observing and seeding into the body. No, maybe you go first, or you can go up. It doesn't really matter. There are different schools and approaches for everything. There's no one way to do anything. And once you get that, you have a chance of finding your thing. Ravishment. Sidestepping fixation and shifting into the open space that allows for the messy and the gritty and the awkward and extreme in its uniqueness. Ravishment. When I first started saying that word, it felt uncomfortable. It felt incredibly uncomfortable. It wouldn't come out of my mouth right. It wouldn't flow. And it was weird when I listened to other people say it too. It felt awkward. It felt choking. It felt off. It felt off, but I had truly connected with an awareness that it was the focus, that it was the word that encapsulates my business, my work, my most prominent energy exchange and legacy. Somewhere between 10 to 15 years of experimenting with human design, and my incarnation cross, vessel of love, the second one. Integration of love in all forms into the body, as an expression of the body, an allowance of the extremes of the body and of emotion and of feeling and of being human. And the richness of that ocean that encapsulates everything. And that feeling of the merge point. I'm getting mental images of Japanese rope play and the surrender enclosed in that, encapsulated within that, and the beauty and the pain and the pleasure, the opening, the acceptance, and all of those associated neurochemicals that get introduced into the soup. As I'm saying this, what is coming to mind is the feeling of opening a show, being the first character to walk out and interact with the audience. The first visible plunking in and being the one responsible for owning it. Terrifying and awe-inspiring. and requires incredible presence. The first word that came to mind was control, but control is truly about your awareness and your presence. Control itself feels like fear, but it's the best. We lack appropriate words. The words that we have in the human language, in the human English language, are unnecessarily limiting. And it's part of my fascination with language, other languages, especially pictographic languages, symbolic languages, language that isn't language. To those of us with limited awareness of like those two things, but truly it's the most powerful one. It's the one that is utilized by the subconscious, by the collective consciousness, by the programming of the brain, the mind, the body, the deva that is the body, the separate consciousness that is the body, the separate consciousness that is the collective and facets of the collective and the energetic signatures of such. I'm getting a visual of radiating sort of like now it's showing me the Merkaba, and the like aura, and the way that everything creates an electromagnetic aura that holds electromagnetic energetic signature. It's different colors, different textures, different paces. I'm now being shown the spectrum, the light spectrum, both visible and not visible. Primarily not visible. I'm now imagining and feeling the call to mention heart math. And that like the way that the heart creates a stronger magnetic frequency than the brain. And the human potential is only realized through synchronizing and getting the mind and the heart into cohesive unison. And I'm doing this because this is how the energy then flows. Energy and information, light and presence and awareness. Which is also now reminding me of the Kundalini. It is the activation of true humanity within the human body. But it requires us to come back into the body. And that's what we're doing. And ravishment is that intersection. And that is why it is the pathway to a well-lived life. And if you've enjoyed the way that I meander, please follow me here and on TikTok. Goddess Juiced on TikTok. Here. This one. This page. And also look up my website. When we do sessions, it is a bit more focused. It helps to have an idea of what you want to focus on. Though if there are multiple things that sort of just stick out, they are usually a more visible symptom of the root, because your body has been really trying to get your attention, so it's made multiple symptoms for the root, trying to get you to sink into that root, pay attention to that root, pay attention to the root of the onion, the middle of the onion, the kernel, the truth at the middle. And I love that part. There is an incredible joy to sitting with someone and guiding them through their own process of reconnecting and recalibrating their body to being a part of themselves again. And the release process and the validation in that process. And the beauty and the ache. And oh, yeah, it hurts. But that's part of it. And when we reject any part of it, we hold ourselves back from being able to be in the transcendent, energetic frequency, vibration. And that's what we're here to be. And there are so many words for it. There are so many ways of approaching it. And it's fascinating to me how much we dance around the concept of ravishment in our society. And I'm not surprised. It's another layer of the rejection of the reclamation of the full self that we are terrified of. We are terrified of it. Like, absolutely fucking terrified. And it's that terror that you also have to hold. Like, it's all of it. Whenever you identify an emotion or a feeling or a sensation, the first step is acceptance. That it's there, that it's in your body, that it's part of your consciousness, that it is with you. That it is where you are. And it's this feeling of feeling it, of sitting with it, and constructing a ritual for you that creates an autonomous connection that amplifies your sense of sovereignty within your own life in an intentional, consistent, committed way. Activating the self first. Through this sense of clearing away, which is what we've been doing and what we've been called to learn to do. How do we clear away so that we can activate what is really supposed to be there? How do we then recode what we are familiar with? How do we walk through that process of how uncomfortable it is? The grief and the loss and the pain and the agony and the sense of shame and guilt and fear and the how could I? And the literal fuck, you know? It's this sense of wanting to suppress it, which, notice, the face, the hand, the covering, the suppression, the not allowing. And we encounter a lot of resistance that is built up. And to me, what's coming up is the sense of the censorship that we experience. The censorship that we are expected to participate in and demand, that we shame each other for not also wanting to demand. Why do we call on external regulation instead of calling for internal recognition and activation? Automation. Why don't we automate our sense of going within? And that seems so counterculture, because it's the culture right now to outsource that. Of all the things that we outsource, it's like we've exchanged the tribe and our connection and our sense of unity for this ability to pass it off, to pass off being ourselves to someone else, to define who that is by what someone else is telling you you are. By staying out of our hips. Interesting. By not holding the feeling. By not being with the feeling. Holding that tension point. Being with it, being aware of it, being present with it. That is ravishment. That is living in ravishment. That is a well-lived, full life. That is the pathway of unapologetic potency of self as human form. That is that delicious feeling that you feel when you really show up and you stay showing up. No matter what presents, you are present with it, or them, or whatever manifestational form it takes. Well, this has been a fun meandering. And the best way to move from and to move through this process, clearing it away, recoding, reactivating, coming alive, and then the process of weaving the self together into autonomy and sovereignty, sovereign embodiment through autonomous ritualization, making sacred the mundane in intentional ways, so as to create a container to hold the pose of the manifestation of the next identity. And from there, we rise into a sense of radiance, attunement, literal radiation of self, the creation of impact, the triangle that then transcends into abundance of self, into the prosperity and the wealth of that maintained crystalline lens, fractalizing prism that is that human expression of you. And that's the process that I am most excited to work, to play, to integrate work play. Because not all of it is fun, you know? Not all of ravishment feels good, but it definitely feels. Why do you feel so much? Why are you upset that you are blessed with feeling so much? Why are you mad that you get to feel so freaking much? At least you get to feel so much. That is a blessing. It's a blessing that we have learned to flagellate ourselves with, because we are becoming instead of what is leaving. We are the new sense of full humanity when we feel so much. And it is in feeling so much and allowing yourself to feel that so much and the wholeness of the feeling in so much that creates potency and power. But when we have not expanded our capacity to hold that identity shift, we self-sabotage and take our own power away again and flagellate ourselves with how much we felt so much, because how could we do that to ourselves? Are you done with that pattern yet? I know I am. I'm so done with that pattern. It's no fun anymore. I'm bored of it. Next. But seriously though, sign up for a radiance rejuvenation session with me. You can get it for free, complimentary. Don't have to pay me anything to just have the session. But if you want to take home or bring with you and have me create for you after the session a audio based on what we do in the session, you're free to add that on for $7 right now. And you can get that through the manifestravishment.info link. If you want to just book the call, you can do that through the manifestravishment.com link. It's this feeling of relaxing into holding the pose that we're all reaching for. And what is our individual pathway for that? I mean, I can speak about what I've done for me, but will it really work for you? Maybe parts and pieces will, if we have those facets of our role and energy pattern in common. That's why I love human design. It gives us this codex to our body-mind connection as a soul living a human experience in a human body. Gene keys and astrology and all of those different esoteric systems are excellent for it. And when I do coaching, I love how I am able to pull on those symbolic languages to describe you to yourself. And to like pass off, be like, this is yours. And study each of these facets so that we both can like develop a language around these new terms that you're using to describe yourself in a way that sits separate from the charged reality of human language limitations. It's beautiful because you can discuss the spectrum of a trait and see it layered. And it becomes this dancing contemplation of breathing in the self. The epiphany after the epiphany of living the experiment of this changing consciousness. The beauty of it when surrendered and opened into truly. If there is any interest in a mini course that you do not see, or if you're wondering if I could lead you through, reach out. Hello at manifestravishment.info. And let's have a conversation. Tell me what you want to experience working with me with. I believe the best way of approaching all of this is to place the experience back into your hands. The language, the learned expression, the way of embodiment must be passed back to the individual going through the process. It is your life to craft and live. However, I can hold a container for you to feel the pieces shift within. And that's what's needed more than anything. That goddess energy of holding space, of holding the pose of I know you got this. Much better than the helicopter parenting of the mother energy that takes over doing it for her child. No, that's not the way you do it. Completely different energy than you got this, babe. We're not even saying anything, just standing there and smiling. That is the feminine goddess energy. Stands there and smiles and holds the joy of it happening in her heart and mind as the masculine creates. I'm getting the image of sex magic. It's delicious. Oh, what is there? The story, the Hindu story of Shakti and Shiva as like the mountains and earth, like having sex. Created from them. That's how it was created, you know. The movement of them created the mountains. Oh, I'm going to have to go find that and link that. Second. Shakti, Shiva, creating mountains. I'll find the link. That's what's coming to mind. That energy of creation. And how do you do that within yourself? Do you allow yourself that disruptive energy? But if you don't allow yourself that disruptive energy, that all in energy, reality is you're just going to stay the same. And it will feel like death. And you will feast on your own death as you create yourself. And you will learn that process of rebirthing yourself through death while living. That is the pinnacle of human fullness. It's how we live fully alive in every moment and die without regret. Die with certainty eventually, because that is the only certainty of human life, truly. So we die. That's why we're afraid of it. It's because we don't quite know in this body beyond that. Well, some of us do. But the collective holds the fear pattern. Our DNA holds the fear pattern. All right. DM me, email me, schedule a call with me. There are so many ways to interact with me. Probably half the problem. Talk to you soon.